Welcome to the Chain Film Festival. Today we are joined by the creative forces behind Nightingale in Berlin. I'm joined by David Rothenberg and Ville Tantu. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Good. Thanks for inviting us.
Sure. So just one by one, we'll start with you, David, just so the audience can get an idea. Just explain to us your role in the production.
Well, even before making this film, I went to live in Berlin for a year, and one thing I wanted to do is play music with the nightingales there, because I've been playing music with birds and whales and bugs, and I heard Berlin was a good place to do this. And after I was doing it and recording this music and playing with people, I realized how incredible it was to see what happened when people played music with these birds and sang with them for the first time. And I thought, well, we have to make a film of this. We have to film it. Of course, it's happening in total darkness. So how are we going to do that?
And Villa?
I was in Finland in a festival called Norpas. I had a cultural festival. I had my other documentary there. And then I saw David's lecture, Evolution of the Beautiful, which was fantastic. I really liked his ideas and the question that was coming up on this lecture. And then we get to know each other a bit. And he told me about his project in Berlin. And I thought it's very fantastic. And slowly we came up together, decided to do the film. Or he kind of invited me to the project, which I was very happy with. And we're very grateful to participate.
That's fantastic. And so you are primarily a documentary filmmaker?
Yes, also I do also feature both.
Okay, both. Okay,
yes.
That's just good to know for our audience to get a little background on you. So now, David, you already also mentioned that this was something that you were filming at night, which I would right away would assume would be one of the biggest challenges to this, but I wasn't there, so I don't know. So what would you say were some of the hardest things, the biggest challenges, and this is for both of you, to filming this documentary?
Well, one reason I decided it might be possible is I heard from someone that this kind of new Sony camera had been invented that you could shoot in complete darkness. I said, oh, we got to get one of those and take it to Berlin. And so I didn't know much about whether it was easy or hard to do this. But someone pointed out, you can rent these things, you go to Adorama in New York, you can rent anything there. And luckily for us, it was during Passover. So since it's all run by Orthodox Jews, they say you have 2 weeks off. It's like you can have 2 weeks for the price of one day. Like, really? So there's a huge crowd of people renting stuff. And so we rented this camera. I didn't tell them I was taking it to Germany. And then we took it there, and then Ville arrived from Finland, and then we figured out how it worked. And it was amazing what you can see in darkness.
I will say, watching it, it looks like it was lit.
Well, it was lit, but the first year we also shot in complete darkness, so-called. And of course, with this camera sensor, you can shoot it almost in complete darkness. But then we were going with the bicycles every time. And then one evening, I realized that the bicycle light was still on. We started to film, and it looked like a huge lamp, like a huge source of light. And I thought that, well, this is something that we have to use. And then a few days later, we went to the China shop. And we really bought these tiny LED lights for bikes, and we put like 2 of them or 3 of them in the. So basically, it was almost pitch black, but it was this tiny. But the camera is sensitive; that looks like more like there's some like lightning gear, which wasn't there really. It was very, very. So the lightning budget was maybe, I don't know, 4 to 5 euros or something like that.
Oh, no big deal. So anything outside, from your point of view as a director, anything outside of that aspect that was challenging at all?
Well, there was I think what comes to editing and this process and what comes also up in the documentary itself, what Davis is referring, it's more like when the musicians were really listening, when they're really present there, and they didn't, for example, present themselves as playing solos all the time or something. They were listening, having a kind of dialogue, at least be open for it, or being more present. Or those moments are really grateful, and then you felt like, oh, I wish we could capture now this. We had these moments, but sometimes also they end up somebody playing endless guitar solo there, and you're like, okay, where's the bird? So So that was like what comes to the content, that you could see that what was valuable, what we are doing there, but it was more about, I try to keep the bird as a main character in a way, or like that everything is surrounding that instead of only musicians. So that was maybe the challenge. And of course, you would never see them in the night time, because they're, first of all, to begin with, they're very shy. And then, of course, in the nighttime, they are shy and they're in the bushes, so you can't see, just only hear them. So somehow to create the atmosphere that they are present. So this was maybe the
sure. You have a whole main character that people can't even see, but is so present the whole time. I think you did a fantastic job of making them extremely present. Yeah. David, this is for you. A lot of people consider math to be the universal language, but I feel like if I were to ask you what the universal language is, you would jump and say music. And so with this documentary, and specifically dealing with nature and wild animals, this came off as, this is music. It truly is a universal language, because you've broken a barrier and are playing music with birds.
Yes, I mean through years of experimenting with this, I come to believe that, humans are not the only creatures making music. Like, various animals all around us are also making music, and we just have to take the time to listen to it and start by believing that's possible. And then, if we really want to expand our sense of what it means to play music, to dare to join in and find a way to make something together that's neither just by birds or just by people. Like, can we do this? And not everyone can. Of course, in the process of doing this, there's many musicians we worked with who didn't quite see this as something interesting, or they would just go play their music with the bird there and not really change. I want to have the people, and maybe also the birds, change what they're doing in the middle of this encounter.
That actually brings me to my next question, which involves the musicians. I guess the question is, what were their reactions when you presented this idea to them? Because it's not something you would hear every day. And like you just said, there were some that just wanted to play their music and they're not actually active in listening to what's going on around them. So for the most part, were they receptive? Was there any pushback? What was their reactions when you said, listen, we're going to go play with birds?
Well, everyone's like a discovery in themselves. Like Inez Teles, who's an opera singer. I heard her give this classical concert at the Museum of Natural History in Berlin, songs, about birds from the classical repertoire. And it was very set and exact. And I came up afterwards and said, hey, that was great. Have you ever thought of actually singing with birds? She said, no. Can you do that? I go, yeah, I want you to do that. And then she became an incredible collaborator in this project, and even on her own different things related to this. It kind of changed her whole life, this thing. She started doing these very different kind of performances, mixing art and science, just because she came and did this. And you could watch her go, whoa, this is like, I can't believe this. And that's in the film. You see the moment when she feels transformed. And I also thought that, there have to be some great Syrian refugee musicians who could be part of this project and would sort of connect this idea of journeying, migration, their own journeys, and the bird's journey. And, I asked different people. I had friends helping me, and a lot of people said, no way. I don't want to talk about that. I'm just here. I'm not a refugee musician. I'm a musician. Except Wasim Muqdad, had such an amazing story that's just alluded to in the film, having been, captured in Syria and tortured for his activism, and escaping very difficultly to Berlin. He said, oh yeah, I know what you're looking for. I understand this. And so he gives this incredible speech in the film talking about, his journey in this bird. And we didn't like prep him and say, well, you have to talk about this. It's just like, okay, start talking. And this just came out. Like, it was just perfect. He just understood intuitively how the story connected to this. And he was not, he also realized that it's okay to connect your journey and its struggles to this story, and that it made sense. And each musician who's in there had a different kind of story, how we found them, some of which I wrote about in my book, Nightingales in Berlin. How each person came to the project, very different routes. And that's what I felt I learned the most doing this. It's just this amazing people and their amazing encounters with this kind of way to relate to nature that I had previously often did on my own, like just me doing it. But having this group of great musicians was so important. I'm so glad we got to film it as well.
You definitely assembled an amazing group of musicians who trusted almost blindly and made some beautiful art in this film. So I think that's a testament to you and the filmmakers collecting these people together. Sure. So thank you. So we were able to see this and for you to share it with us. Ville, I also have a question for you more on a technical side. How was it working with sound? And I know you probably had a sound team, but as a director, you're kind of overseeing a lot of that, and you're literally in the wild. And so when they say you're recording wild sound, you really were recording wild sound, and I can't imagine how technically difficult it may have been to record musicians whose instruments are all on a different level of volume and complexity, and then on top of that, birds in the trees. So was that something that you found particularly challenging, or was it fine?
Well, thanks for asking. David brought some mics and some recorder. I bought some mics and recorder plus the camera. So we often have like 5 mics, like good mics for it, and depending on the situation. And in fact, we end up having quite well, like everything in most of the cases. When we were 2 or 3 musicians, there were also some occasions that there were already like 7 musicians, and even these sessions mostly didn't end up also to the film, because it became like, I think for the dialogue part, it became more like instead of dialogue, more like a party. You kind of like, the bird was, even though very interesting ones, and also everybody kind of dedicated, but so those were maybe a bit more difficult, of course, for sound recording, but also interesting stuff came out music wise. So I didn't find this so difficult, and when we were listening to it in a theater, people been very happy with the soundscape. And I think this is a film that works very well in a theater because of the sound also. That you are there then. And also I think it's the slow pace in some places works in a theater, and if you are a person that kind of lets things to sink in a way. And there are some moments that I myself appreciate that where there's kind of like we try to embrace silence, in some places, that there's because I think the core thing here is to listen, right? It's not so much about playing, it's more about listening to birds. So also I try to create at some point in the film this kind of atmosphere of us listening the whole thing. So, and this works.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. This was an absolute pleasure. I want to say again, thank you for taking time to make this film, and for submitting it to the Chain Festival. Thank you for sharing it with not only our festival, but sharing it on such a greater stage that people can have access to this. It's a beautiful film. It definitely opened my eyes, and I definitely had some moments of, I can't believe this is happening right now. So it's a wonderful film. Again, thank you so much for sharing your time and your art with us. Thank you for taking time out of both of your days, both in the morning, upstate New York, and in the evening in Finland. So gentlemen, take care. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. I hope everyone enjoyed watching it.
Thank you, Patrick, for taking us in. It was lovely.